So I found this LBZ turbo off of Facebook Marketplace for 250 bucks. Let's tear it down. So first thing, you want to spray down all your bolts with penetrating oil or some sort of lubricant that'll get these bolts pretty loose and free. And then what I'm going to do is spray where the V-band clamp is, the bearing housing and the turbine housing. Make sure you get that all freed up. It's going to take a little bit of prying force because it can seize up, so be careful. So after I got the cover off and the housing completely separated, I wanted to wash everything down in the solvent tank, try and get rid of any oil or leftover residue. So a big problem with these Garrett turbos on the LOY and the LBZ is the unison ring gets stuck here instead on the housing with the vanes. So the vanes, it should stay with the vanes, or it gets stuck here from all the buildup of the carbon. So you just have to pry it off the screwdriver very carefully. So as I pried it off, you can see there, I would rotate it and slowly work its way off. So as you can tell, there's a lot of carbon and buildup on the turbo itself. All I'll end up doing is probably sandblasting this very carefully, getting all the pitting from the rust out. As you can see, there's a dowel pin to line up. This is the actual actuator here for the vanes. Sensor, there's a plunger in here. I'll show you more once I take that apart. So now I moved everything into my tool cart right next to my toolbox. Kind of inspect everything. I won't be using these vanes. I have billet low profile vanes with this, as well as a billet unison ring. Everything here will be sandblasted. I want to Cerakote this. I might Cerakote this as well. All depends on how well I can clean it up and that lip down, so it's nice and smooth when it exits. It's a little rough casting in here, polish it up real nice. And as well as port the exhaust on the back to match the gaskets. And then once we do all that and get it back from Cerakote and powder coat, we'll start putting everything back together. For those that are unsure, this is how the vanes work. They open up and close. So this is where the spool comes in. It opens up a little bit more for more airflow. Just like that. That's what it's supposed to do, but it was locked out like that, so it had no spool up. I think that's what my current turbo is doing. So here's the stock turbo. What I did is took some paint marker, went around where the gasket is, you can kind of see a little ridge there, and I'm just gonna take a carbide bit and a sanding disc and clean that up, kind of bore it out in a sense, and kind of port it to the gasket size. And then here I'm just gonna bevel it out, make it nice and smooth. I'm not gonna go too deep on it, but just to allow a little bit more air to flow through the turbo itself. So pretty much this is what I've kind of come up with. Got it all port matched, the gaskets here. Got it as smooth as I can get it just around. Kind of open up those channels a little bit. I did all this with the carbide bit and some sanding discs. Kind of ported this out a little bit as well, just tapered it as best as I could get it with the carbide bit, and then hit it again with some sanding discs, just kind of smooth it out, allow the air to flow outward a little bit better. Looks weird because the turbo's on its side, but yeah, it's all tapered out real nice, all smooth. Hopefully the exhaust will flow in there quite nicely. The next step is pulling this completely apart, the rest of it at least. I got a bolt in here to hold that plunger in place, so when I get the snap ring off, I can just pull it out. It's an M6 by 1.0. I just chose a random length. I gotta get the sensor off for the vanes, and then I gotta pull the vane solenoid off as well. So snap ring. You can pull this out and then pull this out from the top. This is a 1 inch. Already got it loose, and then just pull this off. Hopefully this stays pretty decent. First thing I'm gonna do is take this thinner O-ring, put some oil on it, and I'm gonna push it back in there. There's two little slots down in there. Make sure you push it in the second one down. So the other one will be for your snap ring. Very careful not to pinch the O-ring or get it stuck in the other groove. Got it fully set in there now. And the second step, flip it back over. This top hole is where the little actuator arm goes for your vanes. It moves the unison ring on the vanes, get them open and closed. So now I'm going to stick this through there like that. I'm going to turn it back over. Make sure you set it in the right way. It goes, this is the bottom here, it sets down in like that. So I got the holes aligned. I don't know if you guys can really see it. Now I got the hole lined. Let's put it on the end of my magnet to get it started. So now we got the roll pin in there. It moves how it should move. Now we can go ahead and put the plunger in it. What I want to do is move the teeth in there. So when you push the plunger in there, it grabs the teeth and slowly moves it. So now I'm going to lube up the plunger itself. Get some oil all over it. To help make everything a little smoother. Guide it in a little bit better. That first tooth should grab the first tooth on the plunger. Should align pretty easily. See how it grabs that first gear? Let's see if you can see a little bit better. Grabs the first gear right there. So as you push it, it turns. And that's what you want there. And after that, since you got your O-ring in, that was the first thing you installed. Take your cap here, it sits on top of that plunger. Some people lightly tap it with a socket. That's if you have to. I'll give it a couple little love taps, nothing too crazy. Get it fully seated, then you should see the little groove for your hog ring. And you take smaller one, there's a little bit bigger one for the plunger side, for the plunger cap itself. It's the big one, there's a little bit smaller one. It comes in the kit. You put it down in there like that. Hot green pliers. I push it down with my screwdriver to make sure everything's seated fully. It is. And next, you got your little plunger cap that goes on this side. You have your hog ring groove right there. You push it back out. To which it moves flawlessly. So I think I got a new O-ring with this too, which I did. I always like to put new O-rings on everything I do. So I'm going to pull this one off real quick and put this one on. Use a pocket screwdriver for this as well. It won't matter to take off an O-ring. Always pre-lube O-rings before you put them on. Nice and good. Perfect. I'm just gonna push it in there. It goes a little bit. I only put the bolt in there to pull it out because it's kind of a pain once it's in there. So I'm gonna grab this bolt out of there. Same thing, possibly another socket and some love taps just to get it seated. Now it's in there. I'll just put the other hog ring in it. Should be good with that. And just like that. Hog ring's in. Snap ring, whatever you want to call it. Now we can work on getting the turbo assembled, actually, the bearings on the inside. The whole balance assembly. Make sure you put this thrust washer in the correct way. So it's facing up. If you don't, the shaft won't go through. Key tip there. Then you'll take your oil journal, make sure it's facing down towards that hole. And then you can put your front cover on, put the O-ring back on, should be good. Then we're going to take this piston ring seal, we're going to put it on the thrust collar, put it directly above it, kind of press down, just be careful because these do break sometimes. Set in there, make sure it's on all the way, just like that. Some oil on it, a little bit. Then we're going to take this and put it on the back, set it down in there. You'll hear it click into place. You'll flip the turbo back over with the Duramaxes. There's an arrow pointing up. Since you got everything else put together, I'm going to set it right on there. Next is your bolt. So now I'm going to put Loctite, blue Loctite, on these 4 bolts. And just like a wheel on a car, you never want to tighten them in a circular pattern. You're going to want to tighten them in an X pattern. And then there. So if you do this right, you should never have to pull the turbo apart ever again. Might as well do it right the first time. You don't have to take it apart. I like to always start bolts with my hands. Just a good habit to have, so you don't have to cross thread anything. And once you get them all snug, go back over them in the X pattern. Then you kind of go once around and just feel for tightness. Then I'll see if there's a torque spec on these. Some people just like to go snug. After being a mechanic for years, you can kind of tell on certain fasteners how tight is too tight, and so on and so forth. But we'll see here how it feels to me. Kind of make a clicking sound in your head. Go back over them a couple times, because as you do it, the other bolts will get loose as you are clamping a housing together. Let me check for torque. So I found a website that gives you your torque specs on all your bolts and how to rebuild the turbo itself. I'll put that down in the description. Next thing is your piston ring seal on the shaft itself. You have your second groove down in there. That's the one it's going to go into. They say to push the open end in first because it helps. Of course I got it on the wrong one, so I might have to work with it a little bit to get it in there. Just like that, she's on. So now we put the oil bearings in. Make sure you put some oil on it underneath, pretty much everywhere. Put your spacer on, and then your other bearing. Make sure everything's lubed up. I lubed up the shaft before I put these on, and then a little bit more over the top won't hurt, and down in there, just so it gets some good oil all over the place for when you start it up. It won't hurt nothing. So I say when putting in the shaft, spin it and then press it right in. Make sure you have all your bearings in order. Be very careful. Get everything there. And just like that, she's in. Now time to put on the wheel, the compressor wheel. Kind of go from there. So remember with these wheels, it is opposite. So it's going to be lefty tighty and then righty loosey. I'm going to spin it on left-handed like that. That don't take much, so there's a line. And that's how tight they want you to go. Just line those two up. And do not torque them. They recommend just to line it up. I'm going to put a wrench on the back side and a wrench on the front and just get them aligned. Do not need to torque these. For the KC's turbos, they will pretty much tighten themselves as the turbo starts. So if you can tell, as it focuses a little bit, I got the blue line lined up. I did not torque it, I just snugged it and got that lined up. That's all you need. And then next is your compressor cover O-ring. Oil it up, because you're going to have to stretch it over. There's a groove it sits in. Just run your both fingers. Make sure your compressor cover is aligned. The stud on top goes straight up. Pretty easy. I'm going to put some Loctite on these bolts as well here. Torque those down to 12 foot-pounds, just like your bearing cover. Remember to torque them in the start pattern just like you would a wheel. Get those all put in. Man, that powder coat looks good. Shout out to Twila Powder Coating, he did an amazing job. So I ended up going with some new billet vanes and a billet unison ring. You can tell here. Before putting that on, make sure that this groove here is clean, free of rust or anything. Because if you put it on there and it's sticking and it does not move freely, you need to get this sanded down around here. I recommend taking it to somebody that does sandblasting and getting it free of rust and everything, because you want it to be able to move. So what I'll do here is I'll put some NICs, some high temp NICs here and on the mating surfaces so that they don't get stuck again. So now I got the unison and ring and vanes in. I'm going to attempt to get this in. You got to line up the dowel pin as well as the little actuator. And I already got my V-band clamp here. Almost there. Clicked into place. I'm just gonna put the V-band clamp on. She should be good. So that is it on the turbo. I'm pairing it with the lightning bolt solenoid from TurboTime Performance. I just want to see how it reacts to this turbo. It should flow really efficiently and it should perform very well. Huge shout out to Casey's Turbos for the rebuild kit and the 360 bearing kit. The balance assembly looks amazing. I can't wait to see how it sounds. If you guys want to get it, which I highly recommend you guys go check them out in the description below, definitely check out that link. Go get yourself one for your stock 6.6 turbo. And man, I can't wait to show you guys what it sounds like in the truck.